To celebrate their new menu, my parents did something I never expected. They named a special dish after me. I was deeply touched, almost moved to tears. But when my husband, a food scientist, read the list of ingredients, his face went pale. "Don't eat it, Anna," he whispered, his eyes filled with a fear I couldn't understand. "It's a trap." I had no idea what he meant, until I discovered the multi-million-dollar life insurance policy my parents had just taken out on me. Before we continue, here's a quick question for you. What's one food you would never ever eat? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this every day. All right, let's head to the restaurant. The invitation to the grand reopening of my parents' restaurant, the Miller table, felt like an olive branch, an ornate, cream-colored one at that. For years, my relationship with my parents, Robert and Linda, had been a quiet study in polite disappointment. They valued ambition, wealth, and status above all else. They built their restaurant empire from the ground up and expected the same relentless drive from their only child. Instead, they had me, a quiet librarian who married her college sweetheart, David. He's kind, brilliant, and in their eyes, profoundly unimpressive, a food scientist with no taste for power or expansion plans. Our life was comfortable and happy, built on love rather than stock portfolios. But to my parents, that wasn't success. It was wasted potential. So when they called and insisted we attend the launch of their updated menu, I hesitated. But their voices sounded different, warmer. "It's important you're here, Anna," my mother said. "You're our daughter. We want to celebrate with you." That little flicker of hope that never quite dies lit up again. Maybe this time would be different. The restaurant was a spectacle. The remodel reflected their success. Dark wood, polished brass, and soft, intimate lighting. It was packed with the city's elite, the air alive with conversation and clinking glasses. My parents thrived in it, gliding through the room like royalty, accepting compliments with radiant smiles. "Anna, David, you made it," my mother, Linda, exclaimed, hugging us tightly. My father, Robert, stood behind her, beaming. "We've saved the best table for you, and we have a surprise, something to show you how much you're part of this family's success." I was touched, tears pricking my eyes. This felt like the moment of acceptance I had waited for my whole adult life. They led us to a quiet booth and handed us the new menus, thick, leather-bound, with gold tassels. "Look, Mom. Dad," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "It's beautiful." "We wanted to honor you, sweetheart," my father said warmly. "You're our daughter. You deserve to be on the menu." I basked in their unexpected approval, not noticing at first how David had changed. My methodical, analytical husband wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the menu, his brow furrowed. He read the description of my dish once, then again. The polite smile he'd been wearing faded. He took the menu from my hands, his eyes fixed on the page. Color drained from his face. He looked up, his expression frozen in terror. His eyes locked on mine. He gave a tiny shake of his head, then leaned forward. His whisper was low and urgent, cutting through my haze like ice. "We have to leave," he said. "Now." "What?" I whispered back. Embarrassed? "David, what are you talking about? We just got here." "Anna, listen to me," he hissed, gripping my hand. His fingers were cold and tight. "Do not order that dish. Don't eat anything. We're leaving, right now." I stared at his terrified face, then at my parents, still smiling across the room. I was caught between what I thought was pure love and a warning of absolute terror. The restaurant noise dulled in my ears. All that felt real was David's cold hand and the look of primal fear in his eyes. "David, you're scaring me," I whispered. "What's wrong with the dish?" "I can't explain here," he said, eyes darting toward my parents, whose expressions were shifting from confusion to irritation. "Just trust me, Anna. Please, for the love of God, trust." His raw, desperate plea was unlike anything I'd ever heard from him. This wasn't my calm, rational husband. This was a man staring into an abyss. I made a split-second decision. I chose him. I forced an apologetic smile at my parents. You know what? I'm suddenly not feeling well. I think I need some fresh air. Before they could protest, David stood, pulling me up with him. So sorry, he said to my bewildered parents. We'll call you tomorrow. We hurried through the crowded restaurant, leaving scattered apologies behind us. My parents sat at their table of honor, their faces a mix of fury and confusion. We didn't speak until we were locked in the car. The silence was heavy, broken only by my ragged breathing. Okay, I said, my heart pounding. Talk to me. What just happened? You humiliated my parents. You ruined what was supposed to be a reconciliation. A reconciliation? He growled, his voice low and angry. Unlike him, his face was pale, slick with sweat. Anna, that wasn't a reconciliation. That was an execution. What are you talking about? I cried, my frustration boiling over. It was just a lamb dish with a fancy name. You're a food scientist, David, not a conspiracy theorist. Exactly, he said, his eyes locking with mine, cold with scientific certainty. I am a food scientist, which is why I know that Ramirez sylvestris, the name on that menu, is not wild Tuscan rosemary. That's a marketing term. It's the scientific name for a rare subspecies whose cold-pressed extract appears only in toxicology journals. He took a shuddering breath. Anna, he whispered, you know your allergy, the one you've had since childhood, the one that sent you to the hospital twice, the one your parents know about better than anyone. My blood ran cold. My allergy. It was so rare, so specific. I hadn't reacted in over a decade. It came from a protein found only in the pollen of a wild rosemary varietal from one small region of Italy. Even a trace amount could trigger anaphylaxis. David continued, his tone detached, clinical, like a scientist giving a fatal diagnosis. The extract of Rosmarinus sylvestris is one of the most concentrated forms of that protein in existence. A single drop would close your throat in under a minute, a full infusion, like the one described on that menu. It wouldn't just make you sick, Anna. It would kill you, and it would look like a sudden, unexplainable allergic reaction to a normal meal. The words lethal, unexplainable, tragic accident hung in the air like a death sentence. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No, it has to be a mistake. A coincidence. They're my parents. A coincidence? David's voice was sharp. Anna, I have a PhD in botanical toxicology. I've published papers on this exact protein family. The odds of any chef accidentally using that specific dangerous varietal in a commercial dish are zero. It's not used in cooking for this reason. To put that on a menu, name it after you. Knowing your history, that isn't a coincidence. That's a calculated, precise, almost perfect murder weapon. I stared at him, my mind blank and screaming. The heartfelt note from my parents, the warm phone call, the grand gesture of naming a dish after me, it wasn't an olive branch. It was, they hadn't invited me to celebrate. They had invited me to die. The truth crushed me. Years of trying to earn their love all for nothing. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as a problem to be solved. Why? The question echoed in my mind. Why would they do that? And then another, colder memory surfaced. A phone call weeks ago, my father talking about his new investment advisor and getting our affairs in order. He'd asked me to sign some routine paperwork for a new life insurance policy. Just a formality, he'd said, something to protect you and David. I'd signed without a second thought. The life insurance policy, I whispered. David nodded, grim. They're in financial trouble. I've suspected it for months. This was their bailout plan. The love I'd clung to for so long died in that moment, replaced by cold, unshakable resolve. They had tried to take my life. They had tried to turn my husband into an unwitting widower. They had made a terrible mistake. They had underestimated my husband. And they had underestimated me. Drive, I told David, no longer a whisper, but a command. Take me home. I need to make a phone call. The drive back was silent and heavy. The familiar streets of my neighborhood felt strange and unfamiliar, the warm lights of other homes like distant stars. I sat in the passenger seat of my own life, David's steady presence the only anchor holding me together. The truth of what my parents had attempted was too large to absorb. They hadn't simply wished me harm. They had planned the end of my life. They had written my final chapter and named it after a lamb dish. When we reached home, the quiet of our small house felt like a thin shield. I walked into the living room and my eyes caught a framed photo on the mantel. My mother and me laughing on a beach, long ago. Once a symbol of love, it now looked like a mockery. With deliberate calm, I removed the picture from the frame and tore it into pieces, dropping them in the trash. It was a small but decisive act, a break from the lie I had been living. "What are we going to do?" David asked quietly, anger simmering beneath his voice. "We have to go to the police, Anna. This is attempted murder." "And say what?" I asked, hollow. "That my husband, a food scientist, believes an ingredient on a menu was dangerous? That my parents, the respected owners of the Miller table, tried to poison me? It would be my word against theirs. They'd say you're a jealous husband and I'm an unstable daughter. They're experts at lying. We have no proof." The word hung in the air. Proof. Suddenly, the chaos in my mind cleared. The part of me trained to organize and research took over. I was no longer a victim. I was an investigator. "I need two things, David," I said steadily. "Proof of the ingredient and proof of the motive." The first challenge was immediate. We'd left the menus behind, the only physical evidence of the dish named after me. I couldn't go back, but I knew someone who could. I called my oldest friend, Jessica, and gave her a heavily edited version of events. I told her I'd had a serious argument with my parents and urgently needed a photo of the new menu, especially of the dish named after me. The next day, posing as a curious customer, Jessica went for lunch. She sent me clear time-stamped photos of the menu, including a close-up of Anna's Rosemary Delight with its ingredient list. She even ordered the dish to go, saying her husband wanted to try it. That night, David and I were in his university laboratory. The dark campus was silent, the lab feeling less like a place of research and more like a crime scene, under harsh fluorescent lights. David carefully sampled the sauce from the lamb dish, prepared slides, and calibrated the machine. He ran a gas chromatography mass spectrometry test, a procedure precise enough to identify every chemical compound in a substance. I watched as the results appeared, complex graphs and chemical signatures I couldn't understand, but David could. "There it is," he whispered, pointing to a sharp spike on the graph. Beneath it was the exact protein that triggered my allergy and its concentration. "My God, Anna," he said quietly. "It's even higher than I thought. This isn't just an infusion. This is a weapon." He printed the results, a single, irrefutable page of scientific evidence. We now had proof of the ingredient. The next morning, I turned to the second piece of the puzzle, the life insurance policy my father had casually had me sign. The original documents were in his bank's safe deposit box, which I couldn't access. But I remembered something. Years ago, when I moved out, he'd made me a cosigner on a smaller family box at the same bank. "For emergencies," he had said. Knowing his poor memory, I gambled that he had never removed my name. Walking into that bank felt like entering enemy territory. My hands were slick with sweat as I presented my key and ID. The officer checked the records. My name was still listed. I was led into the cold, silent vault. The steel door closed behind me with a heavy thud. I found their box, and after fumbling with the key, opened. On top of old property deeds and certificates lay a thick new folder. Inside was a multi-million-dollar life insurance policy taken out just 1 month ago. The insured me, Anna Miller. The sole beneficiaries, Robert and Linda Miller. I sat on the cold floor of the vault, holding proof of my parents' plan to kill me. I felt no tears, only a quiet emptiness. I took the policy and left the rest untouched. Walking back into the sunlight, I knew the puzzle was complete. The photo of the menu, the lab report, the life insurance policy, I had everything I needed. At home, I placed the 3 exhibits neatly on the dining room table. Then I picked up the phone and dialed my mother's number. She answered with false concern. "Anna, darling, we were so worried. Are you feeling better?" "I'm much better now, Mom," I said, my voice calm. "In fact, I'd like to make it up to you and Dad for leaving so abruptly. Could you both come over for dinner tomorrow night? There's something important I need to discuss with you." "Of course, sweetie," she said, relief clear in her voice. "We'd love to." I hung up. They were coming, walking into my house, my territory, expecting an apologetic family dinner. They had no idea they had just accepted an invitation to their own reckoning. The following evening, my home became a stage. I didn't cook. The thought of preparing a meal in a kitchen tied to my mother's deceptions was unbearable. I ordered simple catered food instead. I set the table with plain, everyday dishes rather than our festive family china. This wasn't a celebration. It was a tribunal. On the polished wood, I arranged the evidence in a clear, undeniable row. Exhibit A, a framed, high-resolution photo of the restaurant menu with Anna's Rosemary Delight visible. Exhibit B, the scientific printout from David's mass spectrometer, its graph showing a massive lethal spike, laminated for emphasis. Exhibit C, the original life insurance policy, its multi-million-dollar sum and my parents' names as beneficiaries stark under the dining room light. At exactly 7 hours, the doorbell rang. My heart thudded once, but my hands were steady. They arrived looking like perfect parents. My mother carried an expensive bouquet of lilies, her face full of concern. My father held a bottle of my favorite wine, his expression one of regret. "Anna, darling," my mother said, embracing me. "We were so worried. You looked so pale when you left. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine, Mom," I said, stepping back. "I'm much better now. Thank you for coming." Dinner was surreal. They spoke about the restaurant's success, their plans for the summer menu as if nothing had happened. They were rewriting history. I let them, playing the quiet, agreeable daughter until the last plates were cleared. Then I spoke. "Before you go," I said, my voice firm, "there's something I need to show you in the dining room." They followed me, mild curiosity on their faces. They saw the documents laid out and confusion flickered in their eyes. I didn't sit. I stood at the head of the table, ready to present my case. "I believe you recognize this." I slid the framed menu toward them. "The dish you named after me, Anna's Rosemary Delight." My mother smiled faintly. "It was meant as a tribute, sweetheart, to show you how much you're part of our success." "I see," I replied evenly. Then I placed a laminated lab report beside it. "In that case, you'll want to look at this. It's a full chemical analysis of your dish, conducted last night in a university lab. David was kind enough to handle the testing." I pointed to the highlighted section. "Here on page 3, salvinorin A. It's the main psychoactive compound in Rosmarinus sylvestris." I let the name linger before continuing. "It's also, as you both know, the one substance in existence that triggers my fatal anaphylaxis. You remember, the 2 times I was hospitalized as a child." Color drained from my father's face. My mother blinked, her expression a mix of shock and denial. I don't understand," she stammered. "The chef must have made a mistake." "There was no mistake," I said, my voice calm but cutting. I waited a beat before sliding a third document toward them, a thick, official-looking folder that landed heavily in front of my father. And this, I said quietly, is the $3 million life insurance policy you took out on me just 3 weeks before unveiling that tribute dish, a policy naming you both, and only you, as beneficiaries. That was the final piece, the weapon and the motive. The room fell silent, the weight of the evidence pressing down like stone. My mother gave a strangled sob and sank into a chair. My father stared at the papers, his face gray and hollow. Their lies, their charm, their carefully constructed image, all of it disintegrated, leaving only the cold truth of their greed. They weren't just manipulative parents, they were killers who had failed. Looking at them, the very people who gave me life and plotted my death, I felt something unexpected. Peace. There was one question left. I just need to know, I said softly. When you planned it, the menu, the insurance, all of it, did it bother you at all? Did you feel anything, or was it just business? They said nothing. My mother began to sob, not from guilt, but from fear. My father sat in stunned silence. That was my answer. I turned and picked up my phone. Their eyes widened with new panic. "Who are you calling?" my mother whispered. I dialed a number I knew by heart and set the phone on speaker. Homicide Division, Detective Miller speaking. I looked directly at my parents. "Detective," I said calmly, "it's Anna Miller. We spoke yesterday. They're here and I believe they're ready to make a full confession." The terror in their eyes, as they realized what was happening, that the police were already part of my plan, was the last thing I saw before walking out of the room. The detective's voice on the line was steady and professional, the sound of justice closing in. Moments later, 2 plainclothes detectives arrived. They had been waiting nearby. They entered quietly, no shouting, no chaos, just methodical procedure. My parents' web of deceit met the unyielding machinery of the law. They were read their rights and arrested for conspiracy to commit murder. I watched as my mother's hands were cuffed, her expensive silk blouse now absurdly out of place. My father followed, silent, defeated. As they were led away, my mother turned to me, her face twisted in rage and despair. "You did this," she spat. "You destroyed your family." I met her gaze, my voice calm. "No, Mom, you did." What followed was a media storm. The tale of 2 renowned restaurateurs attempting to murder their own daughter for insurance money spread quickly. The Miller table became a name synonymous not with fine dining but with betrayal. The restaurant closed within a week. In court, the evidence, the lab report, the insurance policy, and the recordings from my birthday party left no room for defense. Their lawyers negotiated a plea deal, 20 years in prison. For them, it might as well have been a life sentence. I attended the sentencing and delivered my victim impact statement. I didn't speak of vengeance. I spoke of betrayal, of the parents who had traded love for greed, who had destroyed the trust that once bound us long before they ever tried to end my life. When it was over, and the noise of the trial faded, I was left in silence, a survivor, changed but unbroken. Justice had been served, but my true victory was survival. It was in David, whose steadfast mind and love had saved me. It was in my young son's laughter, pure and untainted. And it was in what I chose to do next. Using the restitution money from the voided insurance policy, I founded a small local organization to help victims of domestic financial abuse and fraud, a crime I now knew was far more common than people realized. I had the means and the voice to make a difference. 2 years have passed. I'm no longer the quiet librarian I once was. I'm an advocate, a speaker, a survivor. I tell my story not for pity, but as both a warning and a promise. A warning that sometimes monsters look like the people you love, and a promise that you can still overcome them. My parents made one fatal miscalculation. They mistook my silence for weakness. My true revenge was not their imprisonment, but what I built from their betrayal. I turned their cruelty into purpose. The inheritance they tried to steal became the foundation for something good, something honest. A legacy not of greed and deceit, but of truth, resilience, and the quiet power of survival. An unforgettable story of betrayal and the remarkable strength of a survivor. What are your thoughts on how Anna transformed her pain into purpose? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.